disease that affects your nerve and muscles and your extremities, your legs and your arms and hands, and so it gets worse.
There are some stories that America thinks it already knows, and then life quietly reveals the part no spotlight ever touched. Alan Jackson's story is one of them. Most people remember the tall man with the white hat, the slow smile, the songs that felt like home. But behind that voice, behind the stadium lights and the golden records, stood a boy who grew up in a house built from someone else's storage shed. A man who buried more than one dream, and a husband who nearly lost the only woman who ever believed in him. And today, he's fighting a battle that no amount of fame can shield him from. But before illness, before heartbreak, before the world crowned him a king, there was simply Alan Eugene Jackson, born in Noonan, Georgia, 1958. The youngest of 5, always the smallest, always the quietest. His father fixed cars at the Ford plant. His mother ran the school cafeteria. Their house smelled of engine oil and worn wood, and the walls were so thin you could hear your parents breathe at night. But it was home. The world shifted for Alan the day his older sister Linda, his protector, his storyteller, the first voice he ever heard sing, died in a sudden accident. He was too young to understand death, but old enough to understand that the world does not pause for a child's grief. He listened to his mother cry behind a bedroom door, and for the first time, he learned what it meant to carry pain quietly. He spent his school years wearing hand-me-down clothes and eating alone because there wasn't 5 cents for milk. Kids teased him, hillbilly, poor boy, nobody. But after school, he went to his father's garage, wiped grease off engines, learned the dignity of a man who works with his hands. And right there, without knowing it, he started shaping the voice that would one day define him. Simple, honest, working-class truth. But the loneliness in that house was what pushed him toward music. His sisters were grown, gone, married. It was just Alan and an old radio. Hank Williams, George Jones, Conway Twitty, voices that sounded like the dust of the South. He didn't sing to be famous. He sang because it filled the empty spaces of a young boy who felt forgotten in his own home. At 16, his parents bought him a $50 guitar, the kind of gift families sacrifice to give. That guitar didn't just change his life, it gave him one. A year later, he stepped on stage in his high school musical. A small moment, a small stage, but for the first time in his life, people looked at him and didn't see a poor boy. They saw a voice. After graduation, life wasn't poetic. It was survival. He worked construction, loaded trucks, did every job a man does when he has more grit than opportunity. But every night, he came home to music. He formed a band, Dixie Steel, and played in bars where the smoke was thicker than the paychecks. But he never quit. Then came the moment that changed everything. He fell in love with a high school girl named Denise. She was a cheerleader, a tennis player, smart, steady, the kind of girl who planned her life carefully and somehow chose the poor boy with the shy smile. He tried to impress her by hiding in the back seat of her car, scared her half to death. But she laughed, and that laugh became the start of a love story that would survive both miracles and disasters. In 1979, they married at their hometown church. There was no luxury, no grand honeymoon. Just 2 kids with a few dollars in their pockets and enough hope to ignore reality. But hope runs thin, money runs out, and dreams, they demand sacrifice. In 1985, Alan convinced Denise to move to Nashville. They loaded everything they owned into a beat-up car and drove toward a future neither could afford. They slept in a basement beneath an old church, mold on the walls, mice above their heads, water leaking from pipes. Denise worked as a flight attendant. Alan played in bars for tips and rejection letters. Every time he thought about quitting, Denise pushed him forward. Every time she doubted, Alan reminded her why they came. And then fate stepped in. On one of her flights, Denise saw Glenn Campbell, the Glenn Campbell, sitting in first class. Something in her heart told her, this is the moment. She walked up, handed him a cassette, and said, please, this is my husband. Just listen. Campbell listened, handed it to producer Keith Stegall. Stegall handed it to Arista Records. And suddenly, the boy from the shed had a door open for the first time in his life. In 1989, Alan Jackson became the first artist signed to Arista Nashville. In 1990, Here in the Real World turned him into a national voice. The next decade crowned him a legend. But fame is a double-edged sword, and Alan learned that blade cuts deepest at home. Endless tours, endless fans, endless temptation. By the late 90s, the marriage that once survived poverty now broke under success. Alan struggled with infidelity, something that devastated Denise to her core. She left, taking their daughters with her. He spiraled. She broke. And for the first time, their love story didn't look like a country song. It looked like a tragedy. But that separation saved them. Counseling, faith, hard truths, tears neither had allowed themselves to shed in years. They rebuilt from scratch. In 1998, they renewed their vows in the same church they'd married in. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. It was two wounded people choosing each other all over again. Just when their marriage healed, cancer hit. Denise was diagnosed with cervical cancer. The treatments were brutal: radiation, chemo, hair loss, exhaustion. Alan, who had once missed birthdays for concerts, didn't leave her side. The man who once nearly lost her now fought like hell to keep her alive. And she survived. Most families would collapse under that much pain. But the Jacksons only grew stronger. For a performer, it's a betrayal of the body. Crowds saw him stumble and whispered he was drunk. But the truth was worse. My legs don't always work the way I tell them to, he said quietly. There is no cure, only slowing the decline. But Alan Jackson didn't retreat. Instead, he announced his last call tour, a final thank you to fans who grew up with him. Every unstable step he took on stage became an act of defiance. Every song became a farewell letter. And every ticket sold sent a donation to research for the very disease taking his strength. That's the kind of man Alan Jackson is. He turns pain into purpose, loss into lessons, suffering into songs. Today, he spends most of his time on his Tennessee farm, fishing, restoring classic cars, watching his grandchildren grow. His voice has softened. His steps are slower. His days of touring are nearly over. But his legacy, untouchable. In an era when Nashville chased trends, Alan held the line. He protected traditional country music like a sacred inheritance. He wasn't trying to be modern. He wasn't trying to please critics. He was trying to tell the truth. His truth. America's truth. And that's why millions love him. Because Alan Jackson is not just a singer. He is every father who worked himself to the bone. Every mother who held a family together. Every couple who fought their way back from the brink. Every American who knows life hits hard, but faith hits harder. And now, as he faces the final chapters of his journey, he stands with a quiet courage that feels almost old-fashioned. Almost forgotten, but deeply, unmistakably American. So tell me, after everything this man has survived, what part of his journey touched you the most? Leave your thoughts below and follow for more stories that remind us what real legends look like.